Daily Maverick's journalist Rebecca Davis says during his testimony at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, President Cyril Ramaphosa misled South Africans. She mentions in her article that the ANC's deployment committee actually discussed and recommended candidates for judicial posts as reflected in the minutes of March 2019. Rebecca Davis joins me now to explain in detail at least some of what she has seen. Rebecca, I take it that you have seen snippets of the ANC's deployment committee minutes. And I say snippets because we've been told that some of these actually were never kept as in minutes of the ANC deployment committee. From what you have been able to glean, tell us what stands out for you.
Right. Thanks for having me on, Oli. So there's a couple of issues here, but I think the main one is that in public statements under oath, ANC leaders, including President Cyril Ramaphosa, have misrepresented what the ANC Deployment Committee actually does and is set up to do. And we now know that because we have the evidence of these, as you say, limited set of minutes of the committee's meetings, we have between May 2018 and May 2021. And the reason we have that is because the Zondo Commission quietly uploaded these to its website as part of the general documentation accompanying President Ramaphosa's testimony. And we see, for instance, that President Ramaphosa denied that the committee would ever recommend judge candidates. This is not true. On March 22nd, 2019, the committee is shown in the minutes deliberating over judge candidates. We also see that in a court affidavit, the ANC Deputy Secretary General, Jesse Duarte, denied that the committee would involve itself in appointments for independent institutions. Also not true. It has deliberated over Chapter 9 institutions, which are supposed to be independent. Duarte further claimed the committee doesn't talk about ambassadors. Well, it does. And in this case, President Ramaphosa actually explicitly admitted that it does to the Zondo Commission. And there's a couple of other examples, probably, which we can go with, but the general picture that we're getting is that there has been this attempt by leaders of the ANC to kind of fudge what it is that this committee does, and in particular to make it out as if its powers or function is much more limited than it seems to really be.
Rebecca, the discussion around judges, the appointment of judges, it becomes ever more important given the kind of scrutiny or even spotlight that has been shown on the judiciary. I mean, right now, the public discourse is around the Minister of Tourism, Lindiwe Sisulu, and her attacks on the Constitution and the judges. Link for us the importance of the ANC Deployment Committee discussing or expressing preference of certain candidates for judges. Link that for us to the important debate around the independence of the judiciary.
Well, there's a few things here. First of all, we don't know what criteria the members of the deployment committee use when they are considering who would be a good judge. But the fact of the matter is they are not members of the Judicial Service Commission, which is the official body set up to recommend judges to Cyril Ramaphosa. So it may well be that the ANC members of the deployment committee have a totally different idea in their head of who would make a good judge, and they could be based on issues like who has ruled in favor of the ANC in past cases. We don't know. We simply don't know that. So the idea is that then the members of the deployment committee go to the ANC MPs who are on the JSC and say, hey, listen, these are the candidates that we think would be great. Now, it's almost impossible to imagine that the ANC MPs on that commission would not be a little bit swayed when they've been told from the highest levels of the ANC, this is the judge that we want. And the idea in general that a political party can exert sway over the selection of individual judges is obviously worrying. Now, the point is that President Cyril Ramaphosa ultimately has the ultimate say over who gets appointed to this as judges. And there is evidence in the past that he has gone against the desires of this commission. So there's not a straight line we can make between what the committee wants and what actually happens when judges get selected. But the whole idea is that in general, the judiciary should be independent of politics. This is one of the most basic tenets of any functional democracy. And that's something that we should all be worried about, no matter who the political party in question is.
Yeah, exactly. And I see that your phone there ringing. At least someone has answered it. No worries about that. Let's try and then talk about the remarks of the President, Rebecca, at the release of the first Zondo findings. And one of the words he used, I think it was a question to him, was that if it is found that I have done anything wrong by the Commission, I will be willing to fall on my sword. I think I'm capturing the President's words correctly there. If indeed the Commission cites him and says, you misled, and for what you did, yes, we may not recommend prosecution, but you did lie to the public, Mr. President. Do you think that's something that he would take so seriously as to step down from his position as President?
I don't know what his response would be, but I do see that the Democratic Alliance has just this hour put out a statement suggesting that President Ramaphosa should potentially be prosecuted for perjury, because they make the point that this is precisely the kind of behavior that former President Zuma showed before the Zondo Commission, and that there should be some kind of consistency. Now, the difficulty is probably that when President Ramaphosa told the Zondo Commission, not in my experience, I don't know that they've ever discussed judges. He could argue that during the time that he chaired the Zondo Commission, that he chaired the Gated Deployment Committee, they never did discuss judges. And that at the moment would be impossible to refute, because we don't have the minutes to those meetings, which, as I point out in my reporting, is very convenient, both for the ANC and for President Ramaphosa. What makes it more difficult would be for someone like Jessie Duarte to claim that she doesn't really know what's going on with the Deployment Committee, because she's currently on the Secretariat of the Deployment Committee. So she would have far less scope to say, look, I don't know what's been happening with this committee because, I haven't been on it for a while. Ramaphosa, he could potentially get away with saying, not in my time. Not in my time, we could never discuss judges. If that's happening now, that's something beyond my control. And in fairness, Polly, there is some evidence that the ANC members in general and leaders seem to some degree confused about the committee, and I think that this is to some degree legitimate. Barbara Hogan told the Zondo Commission, for instance, that when she was Minister of Public Enterprise, it was a source of perpetual confusion to her. She was saying, who's on this committee? When is it meeting? And there is a sense that it does operate in a fair amount of secrecy, and that there may be a kind of plausible deniability to some degree.
Very interesting indeed. Perhaps as I let you go, Rebecca, we know that there is a process that's being led by the Democratic Alliance around the ANC Deployment Committee. Just a way of an update. Do you know where the process is on that front?
So the DA is calling for an investigation by the Public Service Commission into every single appointment that has ever gone through the ANC Deployment Committee in the years that we have minutes for. I think it's unlikely that this will be undertaken to the degree that the DA has in mind. Then, as I mentioned, they're also wanting the Zondo Commission, the NPA, to at least consider prosecuting Cyril Ramaphosa for perjury. I don't actually think that these methods will actually get very far, Polly, but I think it is useful that there's more public scrutiny on the dealings of this committee, particularly when it comes to the years of state capture, so that we can say, hey, if this committee was directly responsible for recommending these compromised individuals to the boards of state-owned enterprises who went on to loot them, for instance, then we do have to ask, is it healthy, is it necessary for a committee like this to still be operating in South Africa in 2022?
Rebecca Davis, thank you so much for those insights. She is a journalist at Daily Maverick.